we have Alok, he, him from California, is telling us that they think the ACA is going a bit too overboard on trans issues. Hey, Alok, how are you?
Hey guys, thanks for taking my
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. Thanks for calling us. I'll just go ahead and let you know that Blayton and I, neither of us are trans individuals, but we are happy to comment and give our thoughts on this. So you think the atheist community of Austin is talking too much about trans issues? What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say if Dr. Ben or Katie were here, it might have been better. But I think with you guys not being trans, it's even better because uh, what I was telling the screener was like just making this call itself, right? Having the nerve to do it makes me afraid of being called transphobe or hateful. And I think that level of thing in our society should not happen. We should have open, democratic, civil, decent dialogues without this fear, which happens a lot. And the main reason was that over the past few months, maybe a couple of years, I've realized that even very secular, liberal, far more liberal than maybe all of us, like supporting the Green New Deal or supporting universal basic income, extremely progressive liberal people are being rubbed the wrong way with the um, excessive push or focus on trans issues. I mean, just statistically speaking, I think they're 0.5 or 1% of the population. We have 14% of African Americans who are facing extreme discrimination. Although I agree, trans people are being killed the most, and they're doing suicides the most. So they're the most tormented. But the pushback is more on these multiple pronouns, 72 pronouns, and who should be called what. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
lack of education and
Can I
misinformation.
jump in
Like
here a
they're being
second,
given
Alok?
hard.
I wanna make sure we can kind of have a little bit of a back and forth because there's one thing that I think is kind of important. Just some questions and stuff. Just not coming at you, man. Just really just trying to understand where you come from, and I'll try to explain where I come from. Why are you said that before even making this call, one of the things that kind of held you back was you were concerned about being, labeled or called a transphobe. Why are you concerned about that? I'm just genuinely, what's the reason that you wouldn't want to be called that?
Because based on my history of listening to many calls and social media and all, anytime you question it, you are looked at as either not educated or not informed enough about these issues, as
So
if
you don't want
you
people
have
to
a
have a
lesser
negative
identity.
opinion of you? Is that the concern, that you're afraid that others will get a negative opinion of you and treat you negatively because of that? Am I understanding that? And again, this
Uh,
this is not a trick question or anything. This is just serious because I
no,
feel like
it's
that's
not.
a really
Yeah.
good place to start. Why is it uncomfortable as somebody who could potentially be in that space of being labeled as somebody who's transphobic? I'll give you my answer. The reason that I don't want to be labeled as transphobic is because I know that that means that something I said or did potentially was very harmful to an individual and very destructive to a community because of that thing that we were talking about with Grant just a second ago about trying to minimize suffering. I know that the more things that I do in my life that even get close to that vein of anti-Semite or racist or homophobic, those things are bad. And those things are things that I should try to avoid, not so that other people don't look at me negatively, but so that the harm is reduced to that individual and that community. And what I would say is that this absolutely is something that is fully in the atheist wheelhouse. And one of the reasons that I say that is because so often the religious side are using their religious understandings to hurt people. And one of the groups that is being heavily targeted right now, especially in the US, are trans people. And this is something that absolutely I am not going to stay quiet about. I'm not going to be quiet when there is obvious harm. Like you said, you even brought it up. Like, yeah, trans people are being murdered in the streets. That's not just freaking anecdote. That's data. We've got that. And that's horrible. And I think that's where we should all be coming from, right? If somebody comes up to me and they say, man, you're a racist piece of shit, my response isn't going to be something along the lines of, oh gosh, I don't want people to think like I said something, you know, bad. My response is, what did I do that caused harm? And how do I prevent that in the future? And how do I help other people prevent that in the future? I understand sometimes it may feel like, you know, it's just that you skip an episode or two and you think, oh no, we're talking about trans issues again. But it, you know, for me, in my opinion, I am always happy to talk about human rights. And I don't think there's ever a time where we are talking about it too much, you know, whatever it is, whatever the issue is, whatever group it affects. But let me stop for a second. I want Blayton to jump in here, and then we'll give it right back to you, Alok.
I think the other thing that Loke said that kind of caught my attention was when you're talking about the lack of education that people have around this issue. If we don't talk about it, how are we going to educate people on it? Yeah. And you say that you're kind of uncomfortable being labeled as something, but I want you to think about it not from this aspect. I want you to think about it like, let's say we put another label out there. Let's say someone's calling into the show and saying, hey, I get it. George Floyd died. It's sad, but can we talk about something other than all this black stuff? Like, how do you think that goes? Like, how do you think who's going to respond in a positive light to that? You know what I mean? So, like, you have to look at the actual issue. These people are being harmed. These people are being marginalized. These people are being targeted. So, yeah, we're going to talk about it. We have to stand up for them the same way we ask them to stand up for us, because I remember when BLM was becoming this huge thing, there were trans people being harmed for protesting for Black Lives Matter. They were being targeted by Black people during these protests. So they are they're a target within a target within a target. Mm-hmm. So if we don't continue to speak up for them, and them being this very, very marginalized group, if we don't have a louder voice for them, they're going to continue to be marginalized.
Yeah. Alok, what are your thoughts, man? I know we gave you a lot.
Yeah, so I think because Blayton brought up BLM, so a simple example would be when the riots started, and some people started saying that, you know, the injustice and the gross killing of innocent black men especially has been unacceptable, and some of these riots are acceptable, and many people are like, no, violence is not acceptable at all. On the same lines, the reason I said secular rarity that I'm afraid of calling is because even when in my opinion, I present cogent, or I can present, or I hear cogent arguments from people I respect, that some of this, like the 72 pronouns, is just over the board and stuff like that. So then it kind of makes sense to me. And just making that argument sometimes gets a response like, you don't know enough, you've not been trans, you've not been with a trans person. So any kind of counter argument is immediately shot down in that vein. So we probably agreed on 95% of trans is natural or nature and all of that. But the counter arguments from the other side are so caustic that the argument is shut down.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for anytime somebody is having these discussions or questioning in good faith that we should just shut them down and just not talk to them. Honestly, even as controversial as this is sometimes, and I understand, I think even the most hardcore of far-right transphobes, you know, anti-Semite, Christian national, I think even the most ridiculous of the ridiculous, we still have to have this dialogue with them, because I truly believe that is the best way to have this, you know, change that we want to see. And I think one question for sure, Alok, is when you're in those situations, and this is not like a dig at you or anything. This is just something that I try to do regularly, and I advocate this for other people because it's incredibly helpful. The question you ask yourself is, who am I being in this moment that I'm getting this response? Who am I right now? How am I behaving? What is my character in this moment? What am I saying? What am I doing? That this is the response from others. Now, that doesn't mean that there's always going to be a time where you're being, that doesn't mean that there's never going to be a time you're being the nice, rational, calm person and the other person is completely off the rails. Of course, that's the case. But so often we are looking out the window, right? We're looking at our neighbor and seeing what they're doing wrong when what we need to do is we need to look in the mirror and we need to ask ourselves who we're being and how we're behaving. In those instances where, yeah, absolutely, I've had a lot of tough conversations my whole freaking life. I love that stuff. There have definitely been times where people have accused me of a handful of different things. And honestly, that thing I said probably was a little racist. It probably was a little transphobic. Like this particular action probably was bigoted in a way that, honestly, I just didn't even think about, because that's what a lot of bigotry is. It's just background noise. It's just baked into society. And you don't realize it until somebody does have the voice and the ability to say, like, hey, man, what you did right there was actually kind of fucked up, And in that moment, again, where I try to go, I'm not perfect, of course not, but where I try to go is, who am I being? Who was I just now that I got called out? How can I fix that? What can I do better? And if I genuinely don't understand, I ask. But it's not everybody's place to educate me all the time. And if I'm standing at the grocery store checkout line and I want to have a big talk about reparations and all this, that's just not the place, man. That's just not the place, But that's okay, because that's a moment where I said something, I did something, somebody stood up and called me out, and I take it on the chin and I go, that's a mistake. Let me think about it. Let me go ask some friends. Let me try to understand. But yeah, give us some last thoughts here, Alok, and we're gonna let you go because we got a couple of other people that want to talk to us. So
yeah, thank you both. I'll keep it short. I think the success of the gay community has been great. The gradual baby steps and the protests and people realizing their friends and families have a gay member, I think that would be a better solution, in my opinion. It has worked so successfully, and now we have like 70% support for gay marriage. I think that would be my prescription, but thank you both a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alok. We appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like that's, there's always an opportunity for us to learn and do better. And I just think if we've got that opportunity, why not take it,
Yeah,
but
I also think it's like it's a big thing to how you approach this. If you go in with the thought of, okay, I'm just going to listen because I want to know more about this, then yeah, go in it with that. There's no need to be defensive if you go in with just, okay, let me take in this information. You don't have anything to defend there.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really, really good point. Exactly.